how everyone's, what you're kind of thinking. But I really should clarify at this point in time that the mojo that I'm talking about isn't the sort of mojo that Dr. Evil stole from Austin Powers. Yeah, and I won't be giving out any dating advice or anything like that today. So if that's what you're thinking, you're here for, I don't know, maybe sort of switch off and go somewhere else. Otherwise, you can hang on. Oh, Lindy, I hope you find Dr. Evil because I love Austin Powers. So, yeah, so we're not talking about that kind of mojo. Now, when I actually looked at the sort of the meaning of mojo and what it actually meant, its origins actually come from Africa. So, it was kind of a magical charm or a spell, something that people had little bits and pieces in a little bag that they kept on themselves to protect them, and they thought that they had supernatural powers. But over the years, mojo has actually evolved, and the Cambridge Dictionary actually defines it that a quality that attracts people to you and makes you successful and really full of energy. And I think from time to time we hear the term, this person's got mojo, and often you're using it to describe someone who's just pumped all the time, who's good to be around, and that kind of thing. So I sat down and I thought to myself, well, what if I could create a Moodle course that took on the persona of somebody with loads of mojo? What would that look like? And what would it provide as an experience for learners? And I came to the conclusion that mojo is actually simply an attitude. It's just a way of being. So, when you have lots of mojo, you're confident, you're happy, you're energetic, you can focus because you've got real sort of direction. And when you're in that state, everything seems effortless. Speaking to people seems effortless. Doing stuff is effortless. It's just a great way to be because you're always energized and you're always at the ready. So I kind of thought, what if... what sort of qualities, so if we turn that Moodle course into a person, what sort of qualities would they have? And what I've come up with are 12 qualities that I kind of use as a framework to guide me through, whether I'm creating a Moodle course or any type of, e-learning sort of intervention or even any training intervention. So there's 12 things that I'm going to go through today, and each of these are really not based on technology, but based on approaches to bring people together, make them happy, give them energized, and drive momentum through their learning as individuals. And I guess when you change individuals, you're actually creating momentum for groups as well. Okay, so the first one that I'm going to talk about is actually just, being user-friendly and visually appealing. And you might think that, yay, that's really obvious. Why are you picking that as the first one? And I guess because first impressions are really important. So the initial experience that somebody has is always ingrained in their head, and often it's really hard to come back from a poor experience. So, visuals are what attract learners from the onset. And when you have a great professional site with really good visuals, it creates trust and credibility. So making sure that you have, visuals, multimedia elements that really bring the site to life, that really make, the context rich and that really contextualize what the messages that you're trying to get across, and using the navigation in a way as the actual, physical arms of your course, so that it's really easy, for people to move through the course, and it creates that easy, effortless motion where people, easily move through the course without thinking twice, with lots of confidence that they're moving in the right direction. Everything is accessible and everything's really easy for them to use. So, Moodle has some great ways of supporting this kind of element. in creating templates, and the themes are really rich and they're really adaptable for mobile devices and things like that. So, making sure that everything's from a visual perspective really nice is one of the first element. Now, the second element is authentic, immersive learning. And what this does is it actually bridges the gap between the theory and reality. And you can do this completely, in an online space. So with authentic, immersive learning, what that's all about is creating challenges that actually put people in that situation, giving them, the sorts of choices and decision-making opportunities and consequences that they would face in a real situation. So what they're actually feeling and developing is a sense for reality, and that real confidence is such a booster. It really energizes people to keep going. And, really by improving their confidence, you're really giving them a sense of feeling that they actually want to learn and sort of delve deeper into the actual content. So, the aim here is to make sure that you've got lots of authentic learning opportunities woven within the actual package. So it's not a one-off, it just becomes embedded within the whole learning process. And at the end, what that's really going to translate to is them feeling completely ready for a situation and really excited to be going there. And I guess the way, one of the ways that I've done that in Moodle is by using things like, the restriction or the access restriction functionality, so that, people are going through at a pace where they're getting the right feedback at the right time, and they're building their confidence, and they're not getting surprises before they're really ready for them. So that's my second element. Now, my next one is making sure that your course is really spot on with hitting the mark in terms of, outcomes and competencies. So what I mean by this is that, making sure that you've really gotten to know your learners, and finding out what really motivates them. So why are they doing this? And, how is this course going to translate into their long-term motive for the real world? And that, again, that's bringing in the authenticity element into your course and figuring out what are you really trying to achieve. Now, when people first, look at a course or think about doing it, or, it might even be a mandatory module that they have to do, within a course, you really want to excite them from the onset. And the way to excite them is by having, a great headline or a course, description. And what this does is it gives them, the key messages, making it sort of a little bit edgy is always positive. Because, it sort of, draws them in and gives them a hunger for more. Now, sort of drawing on from the course description, we've got the objectives, and the objectives are the way that, we communicate the purpose of the course, and they initiate momentum because they make it, very clearly and unambiguously, basically convey the message of what the actual sort of purpose of the course is, and that's quite motivating as well. Now, the content is actually the heart and soul of your course. So this is where everything comes to life. The objectives, start jumping out and really coming to life, and making your content as rich as possible. So, including lots of multimedia, every opportunity to bring the actual pages to physical life with things like podcasts and videos, interviews, and really good case studies, things like that is what's really, important about content. Okay. So the next element is blended learning spectrum. And what I mean by this is you look at, something like Moodle, it's an awesome, platform, but then there's all these other platforms that, Moodle can be used as a great gateway to, or as part of. Now, when we talk the spectrum of learning, we're not talking about just face-to-face, along the spectrum to online. Even within online, there's a whole spectrum of learning. So even within Moodle, you can include things like podcasts and webinars and forums and lots of activities. But the whole idea behind, having lots of blended learning is that you mix it up with a variety of stimulus, and that's what really engages people. So, creating those opportunities for both synchronous and asynchronous actually strengthen online, sort of the online component of a training program, because people sort of do a little bit, then they come back, and then they go off and they do something else, and they're always engaged, they're always moving, they're always doing something, and even if they're actually only moving in the virtual space, they're still mixing it up and being stimulated in lots of different ways. And what this does is this actually appeals to the variety of learning styles. So, for people who are visuals, auditory, kinesthetic type learners, written, it covers, it transcends all learning styles. So it sort of captures everyone, and it harnesses on the fact that, we often use two different types of stimuli, of learning styles to sort of capture information. So we're really taking advantage of that. But the fact that, they're spaced out, and that there's lots of synchronous and asynchronous, really creates a lot of fun for people, and that's what they really enjoy doing. Now, microlearning seems to be a really, really growing field. So I've just moved into banking and finance in my new role. I've been there about 7 weeks, and I'm really finding that microlearning is becoming really popular in banking. And one of the key reasons is that people are really time poor. So they really need to do a little. They only have time to do a little bit of learning, and there's often critical information that they need to learn very, very quickly, but they don't have a lot of time. So one of the things that studies have shown is that with the evolution of our digital lifestyles, our concentration span has also really reduced. And it's, one of the things is information overload. Now, with the use of social media and the fact that we're always walking around with our mobile devices, we've actually become really, really good at, scanning what we really need to know, and just being able to commit short bursts of intermittent high attention to certain tasks. And this really ties in quite nicely with microlearning. So when we can commit, 5-10 minutes to looking at something and absorbing that information, that's microlearning. And that can be really, really effective. So what studies have also shown, and I think we've always known this, is that, practicing or spacing things over time is a great learning strategy. And I think especially if anyone's a music teacher, I don't know if we have any music teachers in the room, but music teachers will always tell you that, if you're learning the piano, for example, it's better to practice 10 minutes a day instead of, an hour a week. So, that the whole idea behind that is that you're constantly reinforcing concepts, you're being exposed, to the concept using different media, and that again stimulates different, or learning styles as well. So when you're putting together your courses, if you can think of giving people these little micro-learning opportunities. And there's lots of terms for this, which I really love. There's things like, some people call it learning peels, so taking a quick peel. Some people call it learning nuggets, which I think is fitting quite nicely in with the banking world that I've just moved into. So I'm using that term in the banking environment, and they really like that. But basically, spacing out, your learning opportunities over time, and giving it to them, giving them that content in as many different forms as possible. So, and using that push and pull approach. So sometimes you give them, a concept in a particular way. Say, for example, it might be a video with an expert, or a procedural document or something like that. And sometimes you get them to actually create content as well over time. And it is just, chunking that learning process is much more effective, over time and space. And we're talking about, learning spaces here is much more effective. So the next element, is social learning and diversity. Now, if you get 5 of me in a room, it's going to be a pretty boring conversation because, I have my ideas and there's no one to debate with. There's no one to inspire me. There's no one to answer my questions or to prompt me for questions. So, we really, social learning and diversity is really tapping into the fact that we're just human. We need interactions and we get excited by being around people. Even shy people get excited by being around people because they're still taking, lots of information in from the people around them. So, making sure that your site is, or your course is structured in such a way that you're really encouraging conversation, creation of ideas. And what that does is when it gets, that whole stimulation going, it changes people as individuals, but it actually creates group momentum and group change. So, creating courses with lots of social opportunities where people can form groups, have discussions. You link them to groups in the external world. So you're bringing in experts or you're sending them off to particular industry forums so that they can really tap into, again, that authentic learning. So really creating multiple opportunities for them to have both synchronous and asynchronous interactions is a really strong way to energize, the whole learning experience and get people involved and excited to be there because, when they know that they're actually going to be interacting and learning from other people and being inspired and being supported by the whole learning community, that's really, that's really inviting for them as well. Now, the next thing ties in with social learning. Basically, people who have high mojo are fun to be around, and mojo is pretty infectious as well. So, getting people to collaborate is inspiring, and it's very fruitful to creating ideas and creating a community. So, when you get that whole buzz going and that whole momentum, it not only is quite innovative, but it creates a real sense of community as well. So by bringing people together, you can really form some great outcomes because they work quite strongly as groups. And by giving them, group challenges or even individual challenges, but where they harness, information or drive from the community is a great way of really inspiring them and making, your creativity quite infectious and quite, quite awesome in the end, actually. So gamification and storytelling. Now, sometimes it's really hard to convince people to use gamification. I don't use the word gamification a lot because it has a little bit of a stigma to people who don't truly understand what it actually means. So I worked previously in a private hospital in the health environment, and you'd sort of use this word and they'd look at you and they'd say, but I'm talking about a serious topic like tracheostomies. I can't make light of that in a game, Gina. What are you talking about? But it's really, using the elements of gaming to create, to embed within your course, and storytelling. So things like using, stories, case studies, scenarios, things like that, and really sort of tapping into people's emotional connections. Now, the great strengths of gamification is that it's active participation and it's really learner driven. So, people are in the driver's seat, and by creating a course that empowers people to move at a pace where they can progress at their own pace, And they also feel, they understand, and it's clear to them that they're progressing, they're getting great feedback along the way. That's really quite inspiring because they're confident, they're targeted, they're achieving along the way. They can see the levels that they're moving up as well. And they're getting instant feedback, and doing that in a way that's asynchronous as well, again, gives them lots of choices, and people actually love choice. So creating a course that has lots of choices in there and lots of feedback is a really sort of engaging an active way to learn. And what it does is it actually, by doing that, you sort of build, again, tying into that authentic learning, you're building bridges between the level that people are at with their knowledge and their skills to the authentic environment, and they're getting real sort of feedback all the time. So that's a great way of reshaping learning and helping people understand their own goals and redefine their learning approach. So getting them to understand that learning is really a process where you make some mistakes along the way, you get some feedback, and you are going to progress. And it really ties in with the basic concept of learning is all about participating, progressing, and achieving your own personal best. And I think once you embed those three things within a course, you've really hit the mark, and you're really enticing people to be there. Now, creating a course that's personalised and multidimensional. So the way our world has become, look at us here. We could be anywhere. I'm in my study at the moment, and I dare not show you the back of it because I share this with my family and there's stuff everywhere. But, it's great. I just got out of bed a little while ago, and I'm here presenting at a conference, and I saw people were in, Europe and the US, New Zealand, and it's fantastic. And you're all using different devices. And, you'll all be coming and going over the 24 hours on your own terms, and creating environments which really foster that kind of sense of, I'm doing this on my own terms, and I can adjust my learning to meet my own needs, and I can also master my learning, at my own pace, is really, what your courses should be all about. You should be looking at creating an environment where they can flexibly master their learning, completely on their own terms. And that means, anywhere, anytime, any device, any pathway, any ability. And, so you're catering again for the whole spectrum of users, making sure that, they're comfortable in that situation. And when they're comfortable in that learning situation, they feel motivated, they feel confident, and that's what energizes them and keeps them going. So this is a really important one. And we've known this for a very long time, but, making sure that you create a course from a learner's perspective, from a teacher's perspective as well, making sure that, you're using, Moodle as well to look at what's happening and how your students are behaving is really important, because it means that then you can readjust the actual whole course depending on how everyone's going, and what you think is happening in that whole learning community within your course as well. So it provides flexibility on both sides of the fence. Now, imagination and curiosity. Now, for me, imagination is actually the most important element. And, as adults, we really don't use it enough. So, children actually have lots of natural imagination, and that's what play is. And as we get older and we move into structured learning, we tend to lose that sort of, that sense of play. And I don't know why, learning institutions are actually so structured in, and they tend to sort of suck out the imagination as we get older. So, it's a strange sort of way that education has evolved in sort of losing that childlike play. And I think that's, we're seeing more and more of gamification come back in, but there's still that stigma that, we're adult learners, we need to be serious here. Well, you can be serious, but you can, give lots of time, create lots of situations where, you can tap into, or people have opportunities to imagine. Now, I'm going to share a story with you from my childhood. So in 1976, I was 9 years old. So, tells you how old I am. Not that young anymore. But around 1976, I think that was the time when Apple was released. So, the Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, created a whole, new world for us. But, being 9 years old, I actually wasn't interested in anything like that. That was really quite boring. What I was more interested in was being outside, playing with my friends, jumping around, things like that. So one day I was playing with a group of friends, and I actually decided to go outside with my friends, and one of them had a scooter, and I could ride a bike, but I'd never really ridden a scooter. So I decided that I would take this scooter, and of course I wouldn't learn gradually because, in my head I actually imagined that I would get on the scooter and I would fly down this driveway, and I would, sort of land beautifully at the end of it. I would just be magnificent once I got on that scooter, because I was 9, and that's how it all played out in my head. So what actually happened was I got on the scooter and I started off really well, and then the driveway was way too steep for me, and the scooter went flying one way and I went flying the other way, and I think I pretty much face-plowed the driveway. So by some miracle, I didn't break anything, and kids in the 70s didn't wear helmets, and I have no idea to this day how I didn't, crack my head open. But I did actually end up, cutting with quite a deep cut on my chin. So I went home, and my mother just, looked at me, shook her head, said, "Don't be so silly and do that again." And, again, being the 70s, she didn't rush me off to emergency, but it was actually quite a deep cut. And in hindsight, I really should have had stitches. And as a result, I've got a tiny little scar on my chin. Now, what's the point of this story? I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that we should all try and tap into our inner child, because although we grow up and, yes, we have the benefit of knowledge and experience, and we can make, much more calculated decisions, we really need to sort of tap into that inner child and have those elaborate ideas and dreams. So, actually putting opportunities in your course for people to just slow down at some point, step back, and really sort of enjoy themselves and do some daydreaming. There's been a lot of scientific work around daydreaming and how innovative that can be, and just giving people time to step away. And you're seeing more and more people in the corporate world, putting actually time into their day to just stop and meditate and think and really slow down. So imagination is pretty strong, and the more we use our imagination muscle, the more we can actually create that, what we call disruptive curiosity. That's when we really, look at things and we challenge concepts, and that's what imagination does. We think, well, why can't we do something? Why can't we change the status quo? And that's, for me, a really, really strong element to include in your courses whenever you can. Now, this ties in with, trial and error and getting people comfortable with, the uncertainty. Now, if my little story that I just shared with you, has taught me anything, is that, actually I'm human. I make mistakes. It's going to happen. Please don't kill me. But it means that I can learn from them. And every time you make a mistake, you really need to, have a positive take on that and really embrace that and use that as an opportunity to stop, think about what happened, use as much feedback as possible as you can, and use that as an opportunity to really reflect, learn, go and explore other options, go and evaluate what actually happened, relearn some new skills, readjust, and then when we relaunch and we keep going, that's when we actually get the best learning activity. So really having a positive take is on trial and error, and understanding that mistakes are just normal. So creating lots of learning lots of opportunities for people to make mistakes and in a positive way, so that they're getting positive feedback and they're not feeling disheartened, and they're feeling like, you know, for example, creating an activity that where if they don't achieve, you know, the required outcome, that then you're giving them lots of support to go and relearn, and then come back and have another go, but in a much more empowered way. And that's quite energizing, you know, giving people confidence in the moment when they've actually failed. And I hate using the word failed. I try not to use it, but that's the actual situation. So, you know, helping them come back from those setbacks is really a very sort of strong element of your actual course. And if we think about people that we're really drawn to, and that we really like being around, they're the people who, you know, support us when we do have the setbacks. They always have a positive twist on things, and they're the ones who really help us come back and lift us up. And that's what your course should be doing. It should be uplifting and re-energizing in those situations. So it really, really should be very, very supportive. Now, reflection and articulation. So, you know, again, my little story, I guess, you know, just by reflecting on the fact that something happened, you know, 30 years ago, and, you know, re-articulating the whole experience is, you know, a really uplifting experience for me, because it means, okay, it was you know, a bit of a negative, you know, event, but, you know, there were no real consequences. You know, I survived. But what it actually, you know, means for me is that, you know, if I'm sort of looking at something and I'm, you know, wanting, you know, if I have a challenge, you know, often what I do is, yes, I have the skills and I'm a mature woman and I'm educated and I can harness in and all of those things, but it means I can look back, you know, at the little 9-year-old who had lots of energy and daydreamed, and I can harness that energy. And just by telling that story, it means that makes that sort of muscle in me to bounce back and to be quite energetic, stronger. So, you know, for your learners, make sure that you create as many opportunities as possible for them to not just delve into deep reflection. So, you know, if they achieve an activity, or, you know, if they don't achieve it, you know, find a way for them to really go through their whole thought process and try and understand, you know, what actually happened. What were they thinking of when they made that decision? What would they have done differently? And once they understand their train of thought, and, you know, they can really sort of start to, you know, redirect, you know, their actions and relearn. And in addition to getting them to understand, the second part of this is to getting them to re-articulate it to someone. So whether it's to their learning peers, to their teachers, or even just to themselves. So by getting them to actually create content or to create their thoughts in as many different ways as possible, again, builds up that whole reflective and elaborate sort of learning approach, or the elaborate imagination that we have, where the more you think about it and the more you talk about it, the more concepts keep coming out. So, you know, getting them to re-articulate in all directions is really, really important. So do not underestimate the fact that, you know, reflective activities are fine, getting them to think about it, but getting them to retell their story and their thoughts is even stronger. So make sure that you have lots of learning, lots of opportunities for them to do that. Okay. Now, I've covered 12 elements today. So, you know, I hope that, you know, you've been able to pick up some points, but what I want to hone into is just the takeaway messages and bring it all together for you. So if we look at, you know, if we remember the 12 elements and we try and create a Moodle course that has these 12 elements, you know, what does that really look like in summary? So it means that it's a course that really focuses on people and their goals. So you really need to get to know your audience and what's really driving them, and make sure that your whole course is shaped to meet that drive. Your course needs to be agile, Okay, so you need to make sure that it's, you know, it can be personalised very easily to everyone's pace to meet all of their needs, and that there's lots of movement, so it's very easy to get around. It's easy for them to progress. It's really easy for them to sort of get lots of feedback as they go. There's lots of lines of communication, and that's all part of, you know, getting the feedback, both, you know, amongst students and between, and feedback is really important in both directions as well, giving those opportunities for students to teachers and teachers to students. So that, you know, don't forget that the feedback in your direction. Remembering that creativity is energising and uplifting. So, you know, getting people to create content in as, you know, as frequently and in as many different forms as possible. You know, I hate this idea of this one assessment task at the end of a course, and I can't believe it's still happening. You know, my son's at university, and I look at some of the things that he's doing, and he says to me, "Oh, I've got one exam here and then a major assignment there." It's just, I think, I cannot believe that. It's just not conducive to learning at all. It would be much more beneficial if there were lots of, you know, assessments along the way, and lots of opportunities for them to demonstrate what they've learned, and that would sort of, you know, keep learners. That's what keeps learners on track as well. Don't forget experiential learning. So make it as authentic as possible. So get people, you know, delving deep into a scenario and putting themselves into the shoes of, you know, where the, you know, the actual story, and that experiential learning is fantastic. Using feedback as often as possible and reflective opportunities. You know, if reflection is actually really positive, because that's when growth actually happens, and I think that's why reflection for people is really uplifting, because it means that they're sort of, yeah, there's a positive spin at the end of, you know, not achieving something. So looking back and thinking, oh yeah, I know what I did wrong. I know how I can change that. I know what I have to do. I'm going to go and do some research. I'm going to gather some more insights and have another go. And that's really a positive approach. Now, when you're launching these courses, again, as educators, we're also learners. So, you know, if you're nervous about it or if you're really unsure, just launch small. You don't have to launch, you know, you don't have to do it all in one go. And your courses will, you know, like your students, will actually develop and improve over time with feedback. And make sure you get feedback, not just from your core target audience, which is your learners, but from your colleagues as well and from industry experts. So get as much feedback as possible from everyone that you can, and that's what, you know, creates sort of lots of buzz for your courses as well, because it gets people talking about them. Nurture curiosity and imagination, and you know, try not to faceplow driveways like I did. But I'm sure if I ask all of you, you've all had a similar story as a child of, you know, breaking something or nearly breaking something or having close calls, and you know, I think that's just, you know, part of growing up as a person, and we tend to lose that as an adult. So, you know, trying to keep that childlike mentality is really important. Collaborate, share, and network as much as possible. I cannot stress that enough. I sign up to heaps of newsletters and seminars, and I get invited to stuff all the time. I network with people all over the world, and I learn, and you know, so much from listening to other people. And you absolutely have to network as much as you can, because, you know, we don't all know everything. Like I said, if you put 5 of me in a room, it would be really, really boring. But, you know, if we get all of us in the room and we start, you know, sharing our stories, that's really, really inspiring. And that's where we really learn, and we really sort of challenge what we're doing by looking at what other people are doing. And when we challenge ourselves, that's when we have really, really, you know, transformations. And that's what the courses, you know, our courses should be like. And I guess when you do all of those things, that's when you get your Moodle MOJO back, baby. So I think, you know, bringing all of those elements really can bring your course to life. And it can be really quite energizing. So, you know, try to, you know, make sure that, you know, you're really creating, you're creating Moodle courses that have really strong human elements. Think of the people around you that really that you're attracted to, and what is it about those people? Why are we drawn to certain people? And it's not because they're good looking, because that's one element. There's deeper. We're human, and we're deeper than that. And making our learning experiences, really creating elements that really harness those deep emotional connections and those deep elements, human elements, is really where our strengths are. So I know I have a little bit of time, so I'm going to give you all a few minutes to share your thoughts. So if Moodle were an animal, what sort of animal would it be? Describe its features and personality. So I'm going to give you don't have to do this, but I often ask it at Moodle conferences, and I get really fun and interesting insights in how people perceive Moodle and how it's working for them. So I'm going to ask, just feel free to type it into the chat pod and share your thoughts on how you see Moodle and what sort of personality and features Moodle has. So I'm going to give you a minute. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to type those into the chat pod, and I'm happy to answer those. Okay, a chameleon. Thanks, Andy. So many options available, yeah. Kim, a lion king of the LMS that is free to roam about and do whatever is necessary. Love it. And if you're having a bit of a brain freeze, if it's 2 a.m. somewhere and you can't think of it, this is actually a really good question to. I use these sorts of questions when I run usability testing. So when I used to do this quite a bit many years ago when I used to work on developing websites. And I used to, take people through usability testing with a new website or a course, and I used to always ask them, if this website were an animal, what sort of animal would it be, and what sort of personality and features would it have? And people would always look at me like, that is a really stupid question. What does that have to do with anything? What it actually does is it actually taps into their emotions, and how that whole experience, that whole interaction with either that course or that website made them feel. And sometimes people have actually said, oh, it makes me feel really stupid, I can't use this, I don't know how it works. And other times people have come out with different comments, like I feel like a strong lion, I'm empowered. So this is actually, a really, really good question to keep and use. So I'm just going to look at some of the other ones. So Elma's saying a horse. Andrew saying a lion that can be tamed. Lindy, a combination of cheetah for speed and agility and a panda for friendliness and appeal, which would be one weird animal. Yes, but that's okay. You're using your imagination, Lindy. I love it. Miranda, an ant colony. When you see it first, you may get scared, yeah, but when you get to know it, you admire it for intricate character, versatility, flexibility, resourcefulness, collaborative features. Love it, Miranda. Really, 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 really insightful, Miranda. Well done. Sarah, a cow. You can use all its parts. Moodle is so versatile. You can do lots with it. Yep. Wonderful. Are there any questions? Anything else you'd like to have a chat? And even would you be happy to share what sort of elements or what sort of things you do in your course that actually energize people? Because I guess that's the whole concept behind Moodle MOJO is creating courses that are uplifting and energizing and have lots of momentum, and they're engaging. Anyone would like to share some of their strategies in terms of keeping people engaged. Happy to either hand over a microphone or, you know, go in the chat pod. Andrew, so why is Moodle, excuse me, I'm just going to have some water. Okay, so why is Moodle the right forum for all of this? Okay, one of the reasons I love Moodle is because it's such a good gateway, and it just seems to be able to connect so easily to so many things. So, you know, when I use Moodle, I use it as a part of a blended learning, you know, solution. So it's really easy to, you know, include webinars and lots of interaction for your students. It has really strong capability. It's really easy, user-friendly. You know, anyone can use Moodle, both from an administrative perspective and a teacher perspective. So I find Moodle really easy to use and really powerful in terms of functionality and connectiveness. So you can really, you know, bring in lots of other elements, external elements, and connect with them as well. So that for me is, you know, the essence of Moodle and why it's such an amazing platform. So, yeah, so far we do is forums for our people. Look, forums are fantastic. One of the things, you know, with forums that I've done in the past is I've invited guests, you know, industry experts into forums to actually generate conversation or respond. And people love that because it just has that element of credibility. You know, you cannot dispute someone with years of experience coming in, and you want to listen to them. You want to hear, because as a learner, that's the goal that we're working towards. We're working towards being in those shoes and bringing in experts really to sort of, you know, give people insights into what's, you know, what they're working towards is really quite a powerful learning experience. Yeah, I'm getting some good comments in there about the strength of Moodle. Fantastic. Yeah, multiple opportunities for creating resources and activity types. Yeah. Now, I'm very conscious of time, and I know Joyce is on after me. So is there anything else that you'd like to add or ask me? I am on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter as well. So, yeah, feel free to continue the conversations. I'll take one last question, I think. Andy, do you believe that Moodle should push itself towards a particular way of teaching rather than remain as a tool to be used how the teacher wishes? I'm referring to the hierarchy of Moodle using Moodle, which promotes some ways as being better. I'm not really sure what you mean by that, Andy. One of the things about teaching is that really it's about, you know, teaching strategies and human sort of strategies rather than technology. So I like to harness all different technologies and all different strategies. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Andy. Some people are really focused on just having, you know, Moodle and not bringing in other sort of, you know, things like authoring tools and stuff like that, and sort of using Moodle in that very sort of traditional Moodle way. I'm into my approach to Moodle and to learning, especially to Moodle. Moodle is a great gateway. So if you use it as a way to reach out in as many different ways as possible and create as many different interventions as possible, that's my approach to using Moodle. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Andy, but I hope I am. So if there's no more questions, thank you, Andy. I might hand back to Shane, and he can wrap up today's session. But thank you very much for coming along, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Mini Moot.
Hi, yeah, look, Gina, just want to say thank you very much on behalf of the whole iMoot team and everybody here. That was a great presentation and obviously generated a lot of conversation. And yeah, just appreciate your time. So thank you for that. And for everybody else, just a reminder, yeah, Joyce Sightseeing is up next. That's in about 7 minutes. And Maren also did mention earlier in the chat, there's a 24-hour challenge. I've just put it in there. There's a question available every hour. So that's only got 7 more minutes available on it. So there's 1 question per hour for the next 24 hours. So see if you can do that. So thank you to everyone and enjoy the rest of the Mini Moot.
Thanks, everyone. Hope you get your mojo back. Bye.